Hi there, and welcome to another teaching, another presentation on the so-called Zadok calendar. In this presentation, I would like to reply to a recent video made by Adam Fink of Parable of the Vineyard concerning this calendar and the Book of Jubilees. Before I do so, I first would like to shortly address the Zadok calendar. Then I will give an overview of Adam's objections to this calendar and the Book of Jubilees. And thirdly, I will discuss his objections. We will have about 50 slides in total. But before we start, why did I make this video? Well, several fellow believers shared Adam's video with me and asked for my opinion, or even shared theirs. In a few cases, it seemed to confirm them in not following the Zadok calendar, which I regard as Yah's rhythm. So the video made by Adam seems to be a well-substantiated attack on this calendar, so I can understand it has this effect. At least we can see that Adam did his best to provide multiple reasons not to follow Zadok. I respect his attempt to be thorough, but I don't agree, and I think it is needed to show the proof Adam provides can be interpreted differently and more in favor of Zadok. I also would like to address why it is important to discuss the calendar, because if we are following a wrong calendar, we will be celebrating the festivals at the wrong time. And if we agree on the idea that the calendar on earth should be synchronized with the calendar in heaven, with a heavenly calendar, then it's quite critical. Although I don't think it is a salvation issue. I agree with Adam on this issue. Why should you study and why should you follow Zadok? Well, two main reasons, I think. All other calendars are based on insights from Pharisees or Sadducees. Whether it's the Hillel calendar, the calendar from 119, or any other calendar, besides the Zadok calendar, that is. And we all know that Yohanan the Baptist and Yeshua warn us for their leaven. Also, Zadok is the selected priesthood as described in Ezekiel. There we can read that they, the Levites, will not approach me to serve in the office of Kohen anymore. However, the Kohanim, who are descendants of Zadok, who took care of my sanctuary when the people of Israel went astray from me, they are the ones who will approach me and serve me. It is they who will attend me and offer me the fat and the blood, says Yahweh Elohim. Which is confirmed by the letters to the Hebrews, Messianic Jews, chapter 7, verse 11 and 12. Therefore, if it had been possible to reach the goal through the system of Kohanim derived from Levi, what need would there have been for another different kind of Kohen, the one spoken of as to be compared with Melchizedek, and not to be compared with Aharon? So, who is responsible for determining the calendar? Who is authorized to make decisions in case of uncertainty and clarity? Will it be a priesthood that Yahushua repeatedly opposes and has been removed from his position by Yahweh himself? Or is that a priesthood recognized by him, whose high priest is even from Judah? To me, this is a rhetorical question. But okay, remember to do your own research and don't expect 100% clarity from my side. Please join the quest for truth. Don't expect also to finally know which calendar is the best. Remember, we still see through a veil. Just trust the process and start digging. Don't expect also to find 100% unity amongst those that believe in a certain version of the Zadok calendar. Remember, this calendar is based on the Dead Sea Scrolls found in 1947. Until recent, the Zadok calendar was not even discovered in these Dead Sea Scrolls. So this is a very young calendar compared to, for instance, the Hillel calendar. What do I believe? Well, I do believe that Torah is still valid, since it is a marriage contract between Yahweh and his people. So we have not been freed from the law of Torah, from this marriage contract. Of course not. But we have been freed of the curse of Torah and of the law of sin. So now I will very shortly discuss what the Zadok calendar is. I I already made 2 teachings on this calendar, so please go to my channel and check them out. I will just repeat the basics here. Being, what is the Zadok calendar and do we have proof from scripture? So here you can see an overview of the main aspects of this calendar. You always have 360 days per year, including 4 intercalary days. You always have 12 months per year, so not a 13th month, that's not possible. Always 30 days per month, plus 4 times 1 extra day for the 2 equinoxes and 2 solstices. The year always starts at the 4th day of the week, the Wednesday, when the big lights were created, on or after the spring equinox. Well, that's one version of the Zadok calendar. There are other versions, to be honest, but this is the mainstream, right, as far as I know. A day starts in the morning. Is it possible for any feast, any festival to fall on Shabbat? No, that's not possible. The first fruit of barley is always on the day after the Shabbat following unleavened bread, so not in the midst of unleavened bread, which is on a fixed date, being the 26th of Aviv. But do remember, this is the date that the first fruit of barley is offered, is waved. It's not about the harvest of the first fruit, that's 8 days earlier, on the 18th of Aviv. Passover, Shavuot, Feast of Tabernacles are always in the midst of the month, the 1st, the 3rd, or the 7th month. And this calendar is based on the Book of Jubilees and the Book of Enoch. Here you see a basic outline with a very well structured calendar. And that's one of the reasons I really appreciate this calendar, because to me it reflects God's character. So, for instance, the first day of the first month is always a Wednesday. And the first day of the 4th month also. The first day of the 7th month also, etc. What I also explained in my first presentation on the Zadok calendar is that we found a lot of confirmation of this calendar in God's Word. If you just look at the end time prophecies that speak of 360 days, or a times 2 times and a half a time, which can only be equal to 1260 days if you use a calendar of 360 days. We also found confirmation by the date of Pesach, when Yahushua died. By the date of the first Shavuot on Mount Sinai, the dating of the firstling of the barley harvest. Not the 26th of the 3rd month, of course, the 26th of the 1st month. Sorry for that tiny error. We found text in Ezekiel about the priestly order of Zadok, and some additional evidence, including David and the showbread, which was given to David when he fled for Saul, and which he most likely received on Shabbat, the day that the old showbread was done away with and the new showbread was put on the table in the tabernacle. Okay. After this very quick rehearsal of the Zadok calendar, let's go to the overview of Adam's objections. Well, his video contains 4 parts. The Book of Jubilees, the Luminaries, the Damascus document, and fourthly, the 364-day calendar. I will only discuss the first 2 items, although I did discuss these already in my presentations on the Zadok calendar. I will not discuss the Damascus document. I don't think it was central to the Zadok Qumran community, but maybe more important, I hardly studied it yet, so I cannot evaluate it. The 364-day calendar have been discussed by me in my first teaching on the Zadok calendar. What I think of Adam's main objective, I think his main objective is that Jubilees is too strict and contains additional and man-made rules that are not only in conflict with Torah literally sometimes, but also spiritually. It's not showing the Father's heart, being his desire to save all mankind, not just Israel. So, even if I address his objections one by one, he may still not be convinced otherwise. Especially since he made a public confession that he was wrong in promoting the Book of Jubilees. But okay, I do hope so. Of course, we could have a big problem, since Torah forbids us not to add up or subtract. So if Jubilees is doing that, we do indeed have a problem. I agree with Adam. if Jubilees is adding. Well, according to Adam, there are a lot of additions. This overview of 7 items is not even complete, I think, but it's covering 80 or 90% of what Adam is saying, I think. So Adam sees additional laws on Shabbat in Jubilees. Secondly, he mentions that Jubilees is listing a different reason to celebrate Sukkot, and also commanding us to wear wreaths around our heads. Thirdly, it contains anti-Gentile aspects, according to Adam. Fourthly, it mentions additional festivals of new wine and new oil, for instance. So these are all 4 additional things. And then he even finds rules in Jubilees that, according to him, are in contradiction with Torah. Like the command not to walk around naked in Jubilees 3, verse 45, the command to wipe out the seed of Lot, and the idea that the sun is the only ruler of the Moedim. Adam has certain questions with regard to the command not to go on board on Shabbat, as listed in Jubilees chapter 50. First, he mentions the siege of Jericho, which lasted 7 days. It ended at the 7th day, and even if the 7th day wasn't Shabbat, they marched around Jericho with the aim of war, and one of these days was a Shabbat, which is forbidden in Jubilees chapter 50. Also, what about the other cities in Canaan? Were they all besieged in less than 7 days? That's not very likely, is it? Thirdly, the Maccabees did not fight back first on Shabbat. Were they possibly influenced by man-made rules from Jubilees? And fourthly, according to Adam, Yahweh smote the Egyptians on Passover. Well, I agree with that, but according to Adam, that was a Shabbat. Also, he asked himself, are we really not allowed to travel on Shabbat? He gives the example of Israel, who left Egypt on Shabbat and made a great journey to the desert. And he also mentions Yeshua traveling on Shabbat to the synagogue. Also, are we not allowed to make marital love on Shabbat? We don't see it mentioned elsewhere in Torah. And what about fasting? Is it really forbidden to do so on Shabbat? Moshe, Elijah, and Yeshua fasted for 40 days and nights, according to Adam, which includes, of course, several Shabbats. According to Adam, the reason for celebration of Sukkot by Abraham is a different one than the reason for Israel. And he also thinks that Jubilees contains certain anti-Gentile elements like Shabbat only for Israel and the command of Abraham to Jacob not to eat with Gentiles. Also, Jubilees adds extra festivals to the calendar, the festival of new wine, oil, and wood, and these are not mentioned in Leviticus 23. In Jubilees 3, verse 31, we read that we should cover ourselves and not to walk around uncovered like the Gentiles. But what about Isaiah then? God ordered him just to do that, At the same time, spake Yahweh to Isaiah the son of Amos, saying, Go and loose the sackcloth of thy loins, and put off thy shoe from thy foot. And he did so, walking naked and barefoot. So that seems to be in contradiction. And what about the command regarding Lot's seed? In Jubilees 16, verse 7 to 9, it is written to leave no seed of Lot on earth. But King David and the Messiah himself are descendants of Lot through Ruth, the Moabite, according to Adam. Wouldn't Jubilees' condemnation concerning all his seed include them? Also, when looked at Jeremiah 48 and 49, we know that the fortunes of Moab and Ammon will be restored in the latter days. Isn't that in contradiction with this command to leave no seed of Lot on earth? And seventhly, we might have a major conflict regarding the luminaries, because according to Jubilees, the sun is the only ruler of the Moedim, which is, according to Adam, in direct conflict with Genesis, which mentions the sun, the moon, and the stars, and not only the sun. So that's even worse, you might think. not only additional material, but even conflicts with Torah. We already saw 3 conflicts now. Well, let's discuss these objections. Let's check out Jubilees 50. And the man who does any work on it will die, who desecrates this day, who has intercourse with his wife, or whoever says that he has something on it will arrange for him to make a journey that day with a view to any purchase or sale. And whoever collects water on the day which he did not have for himself on the 6th day prepared, and whoever carries something from his tent or from his house will die. And anyone who does any work on it, or travels or builds his farm, or in his house or in any other place, and whoever lights a fire, or rides a beast, or travels by ship at sea, and who strikes something or kills something, a beast or a bird, or an animal or a bird, or a fish, or who starts fast or war on Shabbats, the man who does these things on Shabbat will die. When I read this for the first time, I also had questions. So I understand this. I mean, how can we still travel on Shabbat and come together if this would still apply? The solution that we came up with is that Jubilee speaks about business travel, so journeys related to work, which is forbidden. So this should solve the problem of a journey on Shabbat. Concerning the wars on Shabbat, well, did Israel wage war against Jericho on Shabbat? It only says the 7th day of marching around the city. It doesn't mention Shabbat. And on the other days, yes, of course, that would have been a Shabbat, but they were just marching around. They were not fighting yet. And it is likely they besieged the other cities quicker than Jericho, because Yahweh besieged their enemies. And the events in Maccabees, well, this is just an act of self-defense. They didn't go on war themselves, they reacted towards an attack. And where he really goes wrong, in my opinion, is when he mentions the angel of death on Passover. That angel was doing his work just before the special Shabbat, the next day. So not on the Shabbat. Well, if you believe that the day starts in the morning, of course. Which I believe. And yeah, no fasting on Shabbat. Is that not in line with Torah? Well, what is fasting? Isn't it a deliberate attempt not to eat and drink, always combined with some kind of humbling and afflicting oneself for Yahweh? In what way does that apply to Moshe, Elijah, and Yeshua? Wasn't the not eating and drinking not merely a result of being with Yahweh, and not eating or drinking anything but his words? I mean, do we have any record of affliction in those 3 examples? I don't think so. And with regard to the marital intercourse, we have an example, of course, of the first Shavuot. Because in Exodus 19, Yahweh is saying to Moshe, go to the people today and tomorrow, separate them for me, and prepare for the 3rd day. Prepare for the 3rd day and don't approach a woman. If we know that Shavuot is a Sunday always, well, it is in the Zadok calendar, and it's very likely, well, it should be in the other calendars as well, because it's the 50th day after 7 weeks. So after the 7th Shabbat. Remember the Omer counting, so it should be a Sunday. But okay, in Zadok calendar it always is. That would mean that this 3rd day was a Sunday, because on Shavuot Torah was given to Israel, meaning that the 1st day was a Friday and the 2nd day was a Shabbat, on which it was forbidden to approach a woman, let alone sleep with her, which confirms Jubilees. Jubilees has certain anti-gentle aspects, elements. Yes, that's true. And that shouldn't be a problem, because Shabbat is indeed for Israel only. The sojourner is not necessarily a Gentile. But Israel is not the genetic Israel only. I agree, Adam. It includes the grafted-ins as well. Yahweh made a new covenant with Israel only. If you accept Yeshua, you are no longer a Gentile, but you belong to Israel. You are grafted in. And what Abraham said to Jacob about not eating with Gentiles is not necessarily a command from Yahweh himself. and maybe, and even if it was that, it may be temporarily. But I think it's just a description, not a prescription. And with regard to the reasons for Sukkot, I think Adam is making a mistake, because I see many similarities when I compare Jubilees and Leviticus. And when I add other texts from Deuteronomy and Nehemiah, there we can see that this day had to be celebrated, or these 7 days had to be celebrated with great joy, because of the deliverance from bondage, because of Yahweh was taking care of his people in the desert, in between Ur and Canaan, or in between Egypt and Canaan. And why would one situation of nakedness contradict what is written in Torah? We have a comparable situation when the prophet Hosea was commanded to marry a whore, a prostitute. Does that imply we are all allowed or even commanded to do so? Does this exception suddenly change the rule? Do we make our rules on exceptions? And does Yahweh work that well? Well, I don't think so. And with regard to Lot's seed, well, first of all, Yeshua descended from Boaz, not from Ruth. The seed is of a man, not women. But okay, not of a woman. But okay, even if we let this alone and just focus on something else, we do find evidence in Scripture that the final destination of Ammon and Moab was destruction. So the restoration of Ammon and Moab was only temporarily. Just look at these prophecies in Jeremiah 48, verse 42, for instance, where it is written, Moab will be destroyed. And Ezekiel 25, verse 10 says, Ammon will not be remembered as being one of the nations. What then about the luminaries, according to Torah? Yes, in Genesis 1st chapter, we can read that Yahweh said, let there be lights in the dome of the sky to divide the day from the night. Let them be for signs, seasons, days, and years. And let them be for the lights in the dome of the sky to give light on the earth. And that is how it was. God made it 2 great lights, the larger light to rule the day, and the smaller light to rule the night, and the stars. So which light do we have, and what role are they playing? We have the sun, the moon, and the stars, so 3 lights. Together they are relevant for signs, seasons, days, and years. But does it say explicitly which luminary is responsible for what? It doesn't, does it? I mean, if I say to Peter, Paul, and Miriam that they have to prepare the meal, prepare the table, clean up afterwards, and do the dishes, so also for events, is it clear on beforehand who is going to do what? It isn't, is it? They can still decide that Paul is going to prepare the meal, that Miriam and Peter are going to prepare the table and clean up afterwards, and that Paul is doing the dishes or something else. It's not determined yet. All we can say is that the moon is a faithful witness in the sky. And to me, that means that the moon is not the main character, so is not leading, but is witnessing, is confirming what the sun is doing. And that's precisely what I explain in my teaching on the role of the moon. Besides, Adam omits part of Jubilees, which is relevant, I think, because in Jubilees 2, verse 16, we read, and on the 4th day he created the sun and the moon and the stars. So these 3 are mentioned, and set them in the firmament of the heaven, to give light upon all the earth, and to rule over the day and the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. So here you see that these 3 luminaries work together to divide the light from the darkness. And if you want to know more about the role of the moon as I see it, please check my teaching on this at my channel, and you will be surprised, I think, because what is written in the Dead Sea Scrolls is confirmed in reality. The moon really has a role, and it's about full moons and about new moons. Please check it out. So my conclusion is that the Zadok calendar isn't a solar calendar only. The moon is confirming what the sun is doing. And with regard to the extra festivals, well, Scripture tells us to bring the first fruits of grain, barley and wheat to the priest, but also the first fruits of wine and oil. We can read that, for instance, in Deuteronomy 18, verse 4, and Numbers 18, verse 12. The Dead Sea Scrolls give more details on the exact timing, which is completely in line with the different moments of harvesting in the agricultural society that Israel was. So what is the problem? Lastly, some words on Adam's basic assumption. According to him, Jubilees has to be in line with the 66 books that we call the Bible. Well, I can understand this assumption, but you can also be critical here. Why does it have to be that way? I mean, these 66 books were established by men who tried to cut loose the Hebrew roots of their faith. By the way, in those 66 books, we find two references to the Book of the Upright, which is most likely not Yashar, which is a fraud as far as I see it, but the Book of Jubilees, as explained by the God culture. So my conclusion is that Jubilees doesn't contradict Torah, it is part of it, and it gives more details. And is giving more details, is that adding to Torah? Question mark? I don't think it is. So this is all I have to say about this teaching of Adam, and I hope I have convinced you about the opposite. Maybe you have to think of it. Maybe you have to think on it. But yeah, I hope I at least make clear that there are different perspectives here, different interpretations. And according to what I've presented here, Jubilees is indeed a trustworthy book. But feel free to have a different view. I wish you much blessing in your own quest for truth. And if you want to know more or react on my presentation, please do so. You can also ask for the PDF version of this presentation by sending an email to avivalef@gmail.com. Thank you very much for watching. Shalom.